First of all, tell me how do you feel? How does the squad feels? What's the atmosphere within the camp? We like almost, let's say, halfway through, or certainly after the first, first half of this tournament.
Yes, well, it's almost 25 days that we've been together. You can imagine it's been really good. The dynamics are very strong. The work of the players has been fantastic. And as you know, there are different routes in this tournament. We had probably the hardest route. We had to play 2 games in St. Petersburg, one in Copenhagen, and I think it's been a really good experience to be able to play in front of the fans. I think the first half against Denmark gave us that impression of what's needed in this tournament to succeed. Away from home, I've been delighted internally. We had every outfield player that has been able to be on the pitch. And on that, you need to add that there are 3 players that they couldn't be involved in the friendly games, like Eden Hazard, Axel Witsel, and Kevin De Bruyne, that they've got more than 300 caps between them in this national team. And for us, it was important that in the group phases, if we could qualify and on top we could see these players playing 90 minutes, it would have been a real positive. And we managed to achieve all of those. So only one big negative, which is the injury of Timothy Castagne, that we always think of him and we send him our best regards, because it's been a real unfortunate moment. He needed surgery in 6 fractures that he had. So our thoughts are with him, and that's probably the only low point in this period.
So atmosphere is good, as you said. The results have been great as well, which you must have been delighted. We will talk about the first half against Denmark a little bit later, because the context was very different, and maybe that's the only little negative that you had in terms of performances. But for the rest, you must have been very happy on how the team has played individually, performances like the one from Rom or from Kevin, and also collectively as well.
Yeah, Jules, I think, as you know, international football is very, very difficult to get a synchronized performance that everyone has at a real understanding of what we're trying to do. And that's been really positive. Probably you see a real continuity in this group. We've been 5 years now together, and there is a real know-how, and that's always pleasing. It is true that we face 3 very different type of opposition in very different environments. Russia was very different than facing Denmark with a real momentum and using the home crowd. And then Finland, that they were well structured. We were 1 draw away from making history in their country. So their way of playing will be very different. And that's why, as a coach, I'm very satisfied that we were able to almost be flexible with our approach, and we look like a team. And that's always pleasing.
Yeah, you're right. So I'm just going to give you a few names and talk to me about them. The first one has to be Romelu, because all the time that you and I have talked about him, and you were so amazed by all the progress he's made, the level that he's reached with your work, with Antonio Conte's work at club level, even with Thierry's help when he was with you, and now he's back with you as well. What kind of Romelu is with you now, and how happy have you been with him so far?
Well, I think Romelu, we always speak about his individual talent. His individual talent since a young boy, something that he was born with, is that capacity of scoring goals. And if you look at his stats, that will reflect it. The number of goals that he has in every team that he's been is quite exceptional. What we're talking about now is a different player. Now we're talking a player that, on top of his individual talent, has got a degree of maturity that obviously I know Romelu well, because I signed him for Everton at the age of 19. But now it's a completely different human being and a different footballer, that he can affect others. You can almost base different ways of pressing, different ways of playing, and he will execute them with a lot of infectious makeup in what he does. And probably it's been a difference that I've seen in the last 12, 13 months, maybe a little bit longer. It was the perfect move at the perfect time, with the perfect coach, with a perfect dream of winning the Serie A. And I think that's developed Romelu Lukaku into a level that is, for me, the best in his career. But you need to see the way that he started the tournament with a real incisive play in his way of seeing the opposing goal, but then with the responsibility and the maturity in all the actions that you can do in a setup.
And that's why, as you always tell me, he's the best striker in the world. For you, he's the best striker in the world.
But I'm biased, Jules. You know that. I'm biased. Of course, for me, he is. But obviously, I understand that I work with him every day. I see the way he commits himself to this profession. I see the way he wants always to improve. He always wants to listen, and that makes him a special footballer. And if you look at his record, the amount of goals that he scored at his young age for Belgium and then at club level, it would show you that he's one of the best goal scorers in the world. Then, in a very subjective way, I consider him the best.
Right, talk to me about Kevin, because you must have been really worried. I almost texted you on the Champions League final when I saw the injury, and I was like, oh my God, what happens if this is a long injury? So you must have been worried. To see him being with you and coming back must have been great. And then we saw against Denmark, when you have a problem or where there's an issue or something is not working, he comes on and then suddenly everything changes.
Yeah, I think for me, and I said it before, he's the best playmaker in world football. And the capacity that he has to read the game, the capacity that he has to understand what's needed, the way he plays with appreciation of time and space is unique. And that's why I always felt that he's a candidate for Ballon d'Or. But it was a worrying time. The Champions League arrives, as you know, for Kevin. He never comes off. He never goes to the ground unless it's a big issue. And that day to have to be taken off, it was heartbreaking. He's been working for a long time to be in a game of that magnitude, and unfortunately, he couldn't finish it. But it's been really nice to see as well the focus and the desire to get back fully fit and come back and help the team. And medically, I must admit, there's been a real good work by the medical department, working between the federation and Manchester City to try to get the right treatment, because he needed a little bit of surgery. And it's been incredible to see him back fully fit, healthy on the pitch. And then Kevin is Kevin, someone that he had no right to be able to play 45 minutes so quickly. He does that, and then in the next game, he can manage almost the 90 minutes. If not, he did the 90 minutes. So delighted with everything about the adversity, and I think it's a great example in life. Not everything goes according to plan, and when you face adversity, is how you face it and how you change it. And I think Kevin De Bruyne has done that, and we all benefited from it.
Next one is Axel Witsel. Talk to me about, it was a gamble because he hadn't played since January and that bad injury. You still decided to take him. How important is he for you to take this gamble and bring him with you in the hope that he would be able to play and be back at his best?
Well, I think there are certain players, Jules, that you can have 2 or 3 players per position, and that happens in many spots in a national team, because you got a lot of players to choose from. And then you got other players that, in the case of Axel Witsel, you cannot replace them. Of course, you can find other solutions, you can find other partnerships, you can find other ways of playing, but you can never replace, in Belgian football, you can never replace like for like Axel Witsel, just because of his experience, because he's got over 100 caps, because the way he plays, and he gives an incredible balance. So I don't consider that it was a risk. I don't consider that, because it was the option to have Axel Witsel or not having at all. And then we had to give him as much time as we could. Obviously, UEFA rules of allowing us to give 26 players, that's an added bonus for that. And then you need to rely on the character. And when I met with Axel, he was convinced in January, when he had the Achilles tendon rupture and he had surgery, he just got a flat in Antwerp, and he just worked to recover 3 sessions a day. And it's been a long, lonely 5 months. But that's why he's back in 5 months. This injury normally could take anything between 5 and 8 months. And that's probably, as a coach, you need to make the decision based on the character and the commitment of the character. And I had no doubts that Axel Witsel would be ready. What I never expected to see him ready so quickly, because for him to play against Denmark, that was never on the cards. He's progressed so well, and obviously the medical department that we have, I've got a lot to thank for. But Axel's character is what he made my decision very, very easy in that meeting that I had in early March.
And the other one has to be Eden. Eden Hazard. It must be so good for you to see him happy. And we saw him on the pitch, and when he's on the pitch, that's when he's happy, when he's with you and all his mates. And he's been 2 difficult years, really, really difficult years. How did you find him when he joined you before going to this tournament? And what have you made of him in the last month or 25 days that you've been together?
I think it's been a process. I must admit I was worried about Eden because he wasn't enjoying. He could not. His body wasn't reacting the way that his body's been reacting in the last 15 years, and that's difficult. When you're an injury-prone player, you're used to having to cope with a body that it could break down at any time. Eden's that's not the case. He never had an injury of concern in France. He missed only 20 games in 8 seasons in the Premier League, one of the most demanding physically league in the world. And then all of a sudden, in March, in the March camp, I saw Eden. He was very, very sad and down. And from that point, I think he started to work with a real incentive of becoming happy again. And probably the timings, we've been lucky. He's been able to add some good medical work at his club, and we had a real good partnership with Real Madrid in that respect, with the medical departments working together. And now it seems that it's the first time against Finland that I've seen Eden Hazard happy and enjoying his football and pushing away. And when Eden is happy, we are a better team. That's for sure. But it was November 2019, last time that he played 90 minutes for the national team. So you can imagine we had to wait a long time. But I do feel that the timing has been right. We haven't rushed him. He had a little introduction in the friendly against Croatia, and then it was some minutes against Russia. And then it was a little more, a bigger chunk of time against Denmark. And we've been guided by his feelings. And it was an outstanding conclusion to see him playing 90 minutes against Finland. I feel that Eden now is ready to enjoy his football.
Yeah. Mourinho was a bit critical the other day. Like he's got this new gig on the radio here in England, and he said that the attitude of training with Eden is not good enough. Was not good enough when he had him. For you, it's different because you don't have him every day for the whole season. But how do you manage him? Do you see that in him? He certainly prefers playing matches than training. I know he told me that before, so I know that. And there's a lot of players like that anyway. I understand that. But you personally, how do you manage this kind of attitude that you have with him? What kind of relationship you have with him on that level?
I think it's different. I think the work that you do in a club level, you're working to get fit. And you're working to understand the synchronization of all the players. And there's a lot of work in the training ground that is very different to international football. International football, your work is to prepare the game. And that's something I never had an issue with Eden's focus, with his role, with intensity. And then it's his responsibility. He's the captain at club level. Maybe there is less importance on the role on a daily basis when you represent your national team. There is a lot of work to do away from the training ground, and he's always been responsible, committed, and it's been a joy to work with. So obviously, I can only comment with the role that I see Eden Hazard do, and is exemplary in everything he does for the national team. But it's a big difference. National team, you got 3 sessions to prepare a game, and what you do is preparing the game, and players enjoy that more than just working to get fit or working to synchronize, which is what happens at club level. Completely different roles.
So I mentioned earlier that first half against Denmark. How did you feel in that first half? Because I didn't see this one coming. We knew that they had to play with a lot of intensity. Obviously, it was the first game since Christian Eriksen had this incident. The atmosphere was amazing. You concede that goal very early on a bad ball from Jason that should not have happened that way, certainly. How did you feel, and did that first half worry you as much or most as the second half reassured you, if you see what I mean?
Well, I think, first of all, you need to understand that it's the first time that we played in front of a full crowd for 14 months. And we are footballers, and football teams are creatures of habits. And it's almost we got shocked. And we got shocked because the momentum was exceptional. I thought the crowd built a chemistry with the home team of taking extra risks, to having that added pressure to be able to push that extra yard. And they stopped us from playing. We found it very, very difficult to be ourselves. But in the same way, we had to show real resilience because, as you mentioned, we made an early mistake in the first minute and we conceded a goal. I've seen it many times. Those 45 minutes, they become 2 and 3 goals. And before you know it, when you want to react, it's too late. So it's a real positive lesson that we got out of that first half. But you only keep the overall game. It must be that Denmark were better than us in the first half, but we were better in the second half. but overall we were better because we won the game. And that's what pleases you. We have to be able to react. You can never be perfect for 90 minutes. You can never be expecting to be dominant for the 90 minutes because you're playing against international footballers, you're playing against other teams that they want to win in the same way. What it matters is that over the course of the 90 minutes, you find solutions and you don't let the momentum hurt you too much. You saw Denmark playing against Russia. The scoreline is 4-1. We were not surprised, even though we know that Russia's got a really strong team. It's just the momentum that the home crowd can create is very impressive. We saw it with Hungary as well. And majority of the players, they've been shocked with that difference of having a crowd that we haven't seen for a long, long time. So for me, probably it was a game that we needed. It was a game that it allowed us to react, to show our best side and facing adversity in the best way. And we've learned that when you're not at your best, you can just hold the damage to the minimum, because in our side, we always got enough talent to need very little to score goals. And I think that helps you to become more balanced as a team and be ready for what's going to be ahead in this tournament.
Just quickly on that point you made, it's really interesting because I spoke to Antoine Griezmann. We had him on a press conference the other day, and he said exactly the same as you for the Hungary game in Budapest. They had 55,000 full stadium. And what he said was interesting. He said, between us players, we could not hear each other anymore, but before we used to, and we could not hear the coach anymore. Because when we were playing empty stadiums, you could shout everything you wanted to the players. Everybody would hear, even the right winger on the other side. But Griezmann said the other day, Deschamps could not be heard by anyone, which again, it was something so new that even probably for you as well in that Denmark game, you had to maybe adjust a little bit.
Absolutely, it's a bit of common sense. I think it was a little bit of a adaptation period when we lost the fans, and playing in empty stadiums was a little bit different. And I think as a player, you had to focus yourself and find that inner motivation to be 100% in every action. Then obviously the communication became a big strength because you could hear everyone. You could be coach at any moment of the game. And now all of a sudden we've gone back to having full crowds. The communication is a lot harder. You need to pass the messages in a different way. And now it's just that momentum. You need to understand that as a team and as a player, it's okay to be able to get through that sort of crowd noise and the way that the effect that he has in both boxes. And I think that adaptation period will be very significant in this tournament. You got teams that they play in at home 3 games, others that they could be playing, like England, could be playing 6 out of the 7 games in Wembley. That makes it a real different journey for all the national teams. And I'm sure that France will be a better team after the experience they had in Hungary, because we felt exactly the same after the experience we had in Denmark. I feel that as a team we are more prepared for the modern game.
If I tell you that it feels that you've gone from strength to strength, Russia was good, you were very efficient, you were solid, no problem. Denmark was very good because the second half and the character you showed and you win the game. Finland, you took your time and it was a very solid, good performance again. Do you feel that you've all gone from strength to strength in those 3 games, and are you really ready for the proper Euros to start in a way?
We are, yeah. And I think in any tournament, you got 2 tournaments in one tournament. One is the group phase, and I think you need to use those 3 games to make you better, to get everyone ready. And then you got the knockout phases. That is a different tournament in itself. I agree with your analysis of the different opposition, the way we perform. But I would add that in that we got obviously 22 outfield players that I think is always important that everyone had their debut and almost got the emotions out of the way. Now they're ready to help the team whenever it's needed. And I think that's a big plus and a big factor when I saw in World Cup 2018 to be able to have. It's very rare that the initial team in the first group phase game finishes in the last game of the tournament, and that's down to the effect of those players that they need to come on and affect the game in specific moments. And I think that's a real bonus for us, that everyone now had some minutes and has got the emotional debut out of the way.
So you said a new Euros, a new tournament starts now. Has it been hard for you to plan a bit ahead, because you still don't know, when we record this interview, you still don't know who you're going to play against in the last 16?
Yes, but I think obviously that always happens in tournaments. We know more or less which teams they could happen. We know where, which I think that helps a lot because the heat and the conditions we're going to get in Sevilla are going to be quite important. But it's the magic of the tournament. You don't mind not to know the opponent. The bad side is when you've got no game to prepare and it doesn't matter what happens because you're out of the tournament. So I'm not going to complain about this.
That's true. I know also that you've watched all the other teams and the game and etc. Is there anyone that has impressed you more than others for one reason or another? Is Italy and the Mancini kind of revolution, as the French against Germany or the German against the Portuguese, have impressed you? What have you made of the other teams so far, or of the big teams, I mean?
Yeah, I think there are many games that they've been very impressive. If I had to highlight one, I would highlight Italy, because I think they use that home momentum in a very good way. We were talking about the effect of the home crowd. I think playing in Rome has been really important for Italy, but then Roberto Mancini now has been working long enough to see that this team works like a club level team. They had 13 straight wins in what is the qualification games and the 3 group phases. That's not easy to achieve unless you got a very committed group of players playing international football. And then I must admit, I think Wales, they've been very impressive. Their victory against Turkey and the way that they qualified as second, that's another team that they are enjoying the tournament. And from there, probably Germany, that they look like a team that they already now enjoy playing that system. The wingbacks have a big role in their performances, and they will be a really challenging team in this tournament. But probably we're going to find out about more. I think it's going to be a lot of twists and turns. It's going to be big performances and low performances, depending on where you play. If you're on a neutral side or you play in front of your fans, I think we're going to get the most inconsistent tournament so far in the Euros from now on.
Do you feel it's an open tournament from now? I mean, a lot of people have said that France maybe have the best squad and they're world champions as well. But it still feels, and we saw against Hungary where they were not at their best and they struggled a little bit, that maybe it's more open than we thought at the beginning when a lot of people were tipping France to win it.
It is. I think it's very open. And England, for me, is still the big favourites of this format. They play in a home. You know, when the games are getting tight and they get those moments that is a knockout phase, that all the aspects matter when you play at home. Those are big advantages. So to play 6 games out of the 7, you have to be favourite on that. But then after that, on the day, you can see that any national team can win a game. And from that position, there'll be many small factors that they could be decisive. So I don't think this is a tournament that you can predict. I think it's a tournament that you need to see what team is more prepared to expect the unexpected. And for that reason, I think it's very difficult to call.
There's a long way to go, but there's a possibility as well, you know, my friend, that you and I meet again in the semi-final, like 3 years ago.
That would be a good sign. That would be a good sign.
But more seriously, is there a feeling, you think, amongst the players and you and the staff of wanting a revenge in a way? That game in 2018, and I know we've talked about it, still not really, you haven't digested it really properly because you had so much of the ball, you were probably the best team on the day, and yet France was so efficient with that Umtiti goal, and then that was it. They closed the shop and they kept that win. Would you want to play them again and maybe sort of avenge that defeat of Russia 3 years ago?
Not necessarily. No, I know that obviously from the outside it may look that way. I think what we are is desperate to use that semi-final in our advantage, not because it was France, but I think every time you lose a semi-final in a major tournament or you lose a big game in a major tournament, and probably France are the team that they are now because they lost against Portugal in Paris in 2016, I think that makes you a different team. And I think we are a different team after losing that semi-final. And we're looking to try to almost beat that feeling, but not necessarily against France. I thought that's what happens. France are a group of outstanding individuals that they play on song. They're defensively really strong. It's not the national team as such. We want to hopefully learn from what happened in that semi-final to be able to become a better team. And I think the feelings we had that night will help us in this tournament.
And is there a feeling that you want to be a bit more efficient and maybe less of a playing team when it comes to those big games, in the sense that, you know, you can have a lot of the ball, but in the end that might not win you the game. However, if you're very efficient, 1 chance, 2 chances, 1 goal, and then you're very solid defensively, that's how you go and win those tournaments.
Not necessarily. I think obviously we need to be very firm with what we believe, and the DNA of this Belgium generation is the individual talent. we want to exploit the talent by taking risks and being on the ball and being on the attacking play. I don't believe that a certain style helps you to win games. I think being very, very good in your style helps you to win games. And I think that's what we are trying to do, become better on the ball and off the ball, but always highlighting that we are a team that we will try to be on the ball, we'll try to defend as quick as we can, as high as we can, and then take the chances, because whatever happens in both boxes will affect the scoreline. But I don't think we want to lose the identity of this generation, because I do feel that this generation is going to affect the next generations to come in Belgian football. We are a small nation of 11 million that we need to work in a very clear vision. And the vision is to have a very potent DNA in our football. And whatever this generation does will have a big effect in the future.
I know you're very focused on this tournament, of course, but there's also a lot of talk of clubs looking for a manager for next season. You know that. You know where I'm going with the question.
That's always the case, Jules. Always the case. We, as coaches, if we lose 3 games, our job is in doubt. And if we do okay and we are winning games, then there'll be always talk. But at the moment, as you mentioned, we're right in the middle in a tournament that we've been preparing for 3 years. So you can imagine the only focus I have now is to be as good as we can for this next game coming. And with the future, we'll see. I never get the future right. So any prediction of my future, I'll get it very wrong. So you better not ask me about it.
But there will be a time where you're going to go back to club football anyway, right?
Yeah, obviously. I don't know when that will happen. Still a young man in coaching, 47 years old. I came to Belgium for the World Cup in 2018 for a 2-year period. And as it happens, we develop a way of working and a project behind the national team. And it's been 5 years and I enjoyed every single second. So at the moment, we're just focusing step by step. At the moment is the Euros. Whatever comes in the future, it will be the right thing for both, for Belgian football and myself.
And I don't want to finish on a sad note, but more on a note of hope, because it's what happened to Christian Eriksen. You were quite close because you were in the same group as Denmark, because a lot of your boys know him really well. Some play with him currently, some have played with him when they were younger, shared a lot of time with him. If you can tell us a little bit, what was it within the camp for you and how you dealt with it with those players, what you said to them? And then obviously there was that Denmark game where we stopped after 10 minutes when there was all that atmosphere. How was it, those moments?
Well, we were watching the game. If I paint the picture a little bit, we were watching the game, Denmark against Finland from St. Petersburg, preparing for our meeting. And 5 minutes before our meeting, before the game against Russia, is when that moment happened. And everyone was shook up. The last thing you wanted to speak, it was about football. And the last thing you wanted to speak is about preparing how to win a football game. And at that point, it was very difficult. I can only imagine what was happening in Copenhagen, because the feelings were really strong. I must admit that we were just focusing to try to get good news, that we were waiting that Christian Eriksen had a good reaction. And when we got those news, we always had a sigh of relief and everyone wanted to be on the football pitch. But until that point, it was a very uncertain time. And then you see a wonderful message, which is Christian Eriksen is football, his life is football, and he was doing what he loves and on a football pitch. And probably he was lucky that he was doing that, and he had that rhythmic moment on a football pitch, because probably if that would have happened in any other place, in a park playing with the kids, maybe he would have never had that help that he needed. So it's great to see that the medical protocols work so well that he was safe by doing the thing that he loved. And that was a wonderful message that we need him back to the football pitch healthy. And it was wonderful to see that a situation like that and a player like Christian Eriksen brought football together. And the celebration, 10 minutes into the game, we are losing 1-0. And the only thing that mattered, it was the celebration of Christian Eriksen and football in general.
Brilliant, Roberto. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best, even against my team. If you
I don't know. I don't know if you mean it.
You love me too much.
No, but more. I mean, for Belgium, for you, and for Belgium, and for this generation that you mentioned, winning these Euros would be incredible, right? It would be the all the work that you've put for the last 5 years. It would mean so much.
Let's see if we can win in Sevilla first.
Always game by game. You always tell me that, step by step. You see?
It's been great to see you.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.